Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining this session. This is a top 10 composer problem in Drupal project solution from real world sites. My name is Mohammad. I am a lead support engineer at Akuya. I'm 8 years with Akuya, married. I have 3 kids now. Some highlight about this presentation is all of the content of this presentation prepared by my experience. It's not generated by AI at all. So these are real issues that I have seen with many different customers. Hope you enjoy and gain some knowledge. Let's begin. So let's start with PHP version, one of the common problem in Composer. Let's begin with the common error that you may have seen, or similar one, that it's the package require PHP version, but your PHP version does not satisfy that requirement. This is one of the common problem in PHP that developers and user will receive, and this is due to the PHP mismatch. You may gonna say, oh, this might be easy issue, but sometimes it's tricky to resolve it, and let's talk about it why. To fix the issue, you need to check multiple different things. PHP requirements section in your composer.json and the required section, make sure the versions match your production. Make sure you have the correct PHP version on the platform section in your composer.json. And then make sure your local PHP version also is matched with what you have. So you may gonna think, oh, this is the end. No, still we have one more. PHP version on your CI/CD process. If you're using different container like GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, or different container, you also need to make sure the PHP version there is correct. That's not the end. So also most of the time the YML YAML file regarding the CI/CD process might have a definition of PHP version there. You need to make sure that is also correct and it's matching the PHP version with your production environment. Require versus require dev. Emphasizing proper use of require dev for development dependency is one of the most important thing in Composer. Require is the section that we install a project that you want to have it on your production site, all of the modules usually. And the require dev is the section that you want to list all of the packages that it's related to the development, and you do not want to have it on your production site. Why it's a matter? Because yes, you want to keep your production secure. You want to improve deployment speed. So that was the big one, especially for a giant customer, enterprise customer, when they have a giant development and take forever to deploy a hotfix. So you want to have the require dev and require separate to not push any require dev packages to your production. And then also it prevents risky packages in your production website. So the standard way to run the standard command that you need to run it in your CI/CD process or manually on your machine before you're pushing it is composer install -- no dev, which exclude all of those development packages from your composer.json. In installing Symfony packages in your project, it's one of the common mistakes I have seen many times. Developer user, they install Symfony package in Composer to resolve another conflict, which is a bad practice, very bad practice. It caused many different issues. For example, in this error from the left side, you can see error mentioned Symfony/console 504 has installed, but Drupal 10.1 required console 6.0. And you can see from the right side, we have Symfony Console 5.4. And that is the problem, basically creating conflict in your Composer project when you are installing something, or you're running Composer update or Composer install. So try to avoid installing any Symfony package unless it's really custom work and it's necessary and you have a purpose on. The dev vendor directory, the vendor directory in Drupal project, managing the vendor directory correctly is essential for having a secure, reliable, and maintainable Drupal project. What it is and where should be. So when there is a folder that is generated by Composer, so when you run Composer and install, Composer will generate that for you. You should not touch it. It should be above the doc root. That's a recommendation and best practices. And if you want to have extra protection, you can install Drupal/core vendor hardening, which what it does, it basically clean up your vendor directory, remove some executable file and sensitive things on your vendor directory. This is more makes sense if the site has the vendor directory in the web root or the root direct in the web folder, but try to avoid to have that there. So try to always keep it outside of the public directory, not accessible to the users. And then also make sure you're using the way that you're deploying it, make sure you're using deployment push artifact mechanism to deploying your code to your environments or to your production. I remember there was a situation with one of my customers that for a while we were trying to figure out why this error is coming. And the error was just one of the PHP error, and we were trying to figure out what is going on. And eventually, after hours, we found out the site has two vendor directory, one in the root, one above the doc root or web directory. Although the autoload.php was pointing to the correct vendor, but the other second vendor directory was getting involved for some reason, creating an error. So deleting that vendor directory resolved that right away. So to make sure you don't have a leftover or bad vendor directory as well. Composer, get, and CI/CD process, and the hidden vendor trap that I called the title for this slide. And let's start with an example. This is a very common error that you may have seen. This has happened basically after deployment. And when the user was running drush commands, we're getting this error. So the class and the PHP file doesn't really matter. It's not my highlight here. So the highlight here is you see an uncatch error class and you see not found. Why you're getting this? Why does this happen? This is happening because the developer previously using get to commit the vendor directory to the repository when they were pushing it to the destination or dev environment or production environment. And then they decide to go with switch to CI/CD process, going to GitHub, GitLab, or other container process. And then when they did that, that basically caused outdated or partial vendor directory, causes auto-loading errors and missing classes on the destination. The mistake here was basically Get was ignoring new changes, not the previous changes that was there in Get. So there was a leftover Get in the repository, and on top of it, CI/CD was running Composer and installed to the destination. But still, there was some misconfig in the vendor directory left over that was causing this error. And it was causing the not missing some specific class or file. So try to avoid that and make sure you are using push artifact mechanism. You can do it locally. You don't have to be CI/CD process, but there are some commands or some tools that you can still use, have a benefit of the push artifact mechanism. How to fix it? Basically, you need to clear the get cache and remove the vendor directory entirely, and then commit your change again and make sure you have the vendor directory in the get ignore, and then use the CI/CD process again. Make sure you're having an appropriate composer installing your CI/CD process and create a fresh vendor directory. Composer on Windows versus Linux and Mac is one of the hot topic. Why does it matter? Composer is a cross-platform software, but most PHP Drupal projects are developed and deployed on Linux. So I have seen many common problems on Windows machine, like line ending problems, performance problem. When you're running Composer install, usually is very slow on Windows. Case sensitivity problem, that's one of the common one on Windows. Executable scripts on Windows and Mac and Linux are different. And also path separator issue also is different. Slash versus backslash on Windows and Linux are different behaviors. And symlink support is different on Linux. So let's talk about symlink one, which is the hot one. Symlink issue on basically Windows machine. When it was happening, you're cloning your repository or you're checking out your branch, you may gonna get one of these error, said unable to create symlink, a specific file, or maybe drush bin directory in the vendor directory, file name too long. So that's a very common problem I have seen. And what is the problem? The problem basically is Composer is trying to create a symlink in vendor bin directory for executable scripts. And Windows has a support for symlink is limited on Windows machine. And Get on Windows may convert the symlink to regular files containing the symlink's path as a text. So, and they're going to see that error. Just to be honest, avoid using Windows unless you're trying to have a container or maybe install virtual machine and having go with Linux. I think it's best practice. Unless you have to stay on Windows, then go with maybe a virtual machine, Windows on top of your Linux virtual machine on top of your Windows. Minimize direct module installation in Composer. On the screen you can see Composer required Drupal path auto. It's one of the famous modules in Drupal. And when you're running this Composer command to install path auto, you can see in the output it's installing path auto and token module. Now look at this error. We know now the path auto depend on token. And the problem here is if you require incompatible version of the token module in your composer.json in the required section, that's going to cause problem for Composer, and you will going to get one of these conflict. Because you have defined in a specific version for token in your composer.json, and Composer is trying to require version 1.8 instead of 1.7 installing to your project. It can't do that because you force the Composer to have it on a specific version. So you're going to get the conflict. So try to avoid install a dependency of another modules. If you install path auto, you're good to go. You don't need to install token again. Let basically Composer to install the dependency packages, which is my next slide. Let Composer resolve versions for you. In this Composer.json, which is pretty clean and organized, but the issue here in this Composer.json is you do not see any up caret or any tilde before the version number. This means you are basically locking the version number. Why not locking? Because when you're locking a Drupal core or any modules, you basically telling Composer that you want to have that specific version. And it will block the update and security patch for that specific module and project, and also cause conflict when you are trying to install other modules in your project. And also will make the update much harder in future for you. So best practice is try to always keep the up caret and the tilde before the version number. It means you want to always let Composer to make a decision for you how the dependency needs to get updated. Additional helpful tips, highly recommend you always run Composer self-updates on your machine. Make sure Composer is up to date. It's very important. Composer audit is one of the good commands. So when you're running it, you're gonna see if there's any security issue in your packages and in your project. You can identify those with Composer audit. Composer why and Composer why not is one of the best commands to identify and track the Composer conflict. When you're seeing a conflict, you basically run Composer why, that project name, which basically will tell you why you're getting this error, which project is requiring which product, which one is dependency of the other project. And my favorite is Composer outdated. Run it regularly. Make sure your project is up to date. It will also list all of the major and minor versions in your project. And make sure you're updating all of the project in the direct dependency in your composer.json using the output. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate your time, and I'm looking for hearing your questions, thought, concern, feedback. This presentation could be longer, so I tried to squeeze it for 20 minutes presentation. Hopefully maybe for Chicago, which is 40 minutes. So maybe I'm going to present it there, if it's possible. So because there is a lot of more than 10. So these are the hot one. But these are like, I try to get these from years of experience that is happening with many different customers. So hope you enjoy. Thank you very much.